Our group was tasked with building a precision launcher for FEDD Day. We tried to follow the design cycle as close as possible while building it. First, we identified the design specifications that we had to follow and what our launcher was required to do. The launcher had to fit within an imaginary 4-foot cube. It had to launch a projectile that was made of foam-like material. The launcher had to have 2 energy transfers, one of which had to be a 5-pound weight being dropped by one of our group members, and the maximum distance the launcher was required to shoot was 30 feet. After we learned the design specifications, we decided that each group member would come up with a design, and we would pick which design would be most effective at our next meeting. The final design that we agreed upon was similar to a crossbow, in that the weight being dropped would pull back a slide on a rail and release to launch the ball toward the target. After we decided on a final design, we began construction. During construction, we met every Thursday at the craft center and built our launcher according to the design we had agreed upon. We had to make a few changes, which included that we added much more support for the crossbow than we originally planned, and we did not have a tube covering the rail off of which the ball was launched. But other than those 2 changes, our launcher resembled our design very closely. After we finished construction, we began testing. We tested the launcher several times. It was fairly consistent and performed very well during testing, but we had to make a few changes over time due to our low-quality materials breaking.
At the first year engineering design day competition, our launcher finished 4th place overall for the afternoon session, receiving an honorable mention and scoring 15 points. We attempted to fire our launcher from 30 feet twice before moving up to the 20-foot mark for our 3rd attempt. On our first attempt, we fired from the 30-foot mark, and the projectile stayed true down the line and missed just in front of the target. However, on our second attempt, the projectile veered sharply to the left and did not travel the correct distance. Therefore, for our 3rd attempt, we moved up to the 20-foot mark and attempted to compensate for the path of the projectile in the previous launch, but we still missed the target to the left. Because we were not able to actually hit the target with our launcher, all of the points we received were awarded due to our launcher's design. After the competition, we attempted to fire the launcher again, but the trigger mechanism had failed, and we were only able to launch the projectile if we released it manually. I will now include the videos we took at the FEDD competition demonstrating our launcher's performance.
Yeah, a little bit.
One of the biggest design challenges we faced was keeping the ball on the cart. During testing, it was prone to come off vertically as it was drawn back, or come off in erratic directions. We experimented with several different housing solutions for the cart. However, in the end, we changed the design such that the ball sat stationary at the end of the launcher and was then impacted by a screw on the cart, propelling the ball forward. Another challenge we faced was how to get the launcher to release properly. We used cabinet latches, and these latches had a tendency to release too early after repeated testing. We determined that the metal tips were deforming when the latch was released, causing it to become progressively easier to come apart. Our solution to this was to get several latches that were in just the right shape and attach them all to the paracord, so that they could be cycled to reduce wear.
Some things that our team would change next year are definitely using higher quality materials. For example, our hinges snapped prior to even competing in FEDD, so we had to compete with snapped hinges, which took away from the stability of the triggering mechanism. Additionally, we would begin construction earlier. We began pretty early. However, if we had started even a week earlier, we could have fine-tuned the launcher to even a greater degree and maybe have gotten third place instead of fourth. Another thing that we would definitely change is measuring twice before you screw something in. For example, our tower and pullback mechanisms weren't aligned, which caused the pulleys to bind the rope, and it's really messed up our final attempts to get a higher score. Moving on to some advice to the class of 2022. We would definitely recommend starting early. It allows for you to have a head start on most of the other groups because realistically they will not start as early as you have. Also, our group had a consistent time that we would meet at weekly, which was amazing because we would all know not to schedule anything during that time, and that was a time that was reserved for FEDD and working. Building on that, while you are working during that time, you shouldn't be goofing off too much. You should be getting work done, getting research done, and stuff like that. Definitely make sure that you read the rules of the competition. There were a couple of groups that were flat out disqualified because they hadn't read the rules. They only had one energy transfer while you were required to have two. Reading the rules for 10 minutes can save you the embarrassment at the design day. Also, doing as much research as you can before construction to make your launcher the best is definitely something that I would recommend. And building upon that, thinking of a modular design because the design day is actually pretty far away from all the dorms. So if you have a huge launcher, it's pretty hard to transport all the way over from your dorm to the McKimmon Center. One last note is to just say that you should definitely do your best. It's really easy to say, oh, this isn't for a grade. It doesn't matter how well we do. But there are industry professionals working there. I'm sure of it that if your group does way better than all of the other groups, then they'll have their eye on you and maybe set up an internship through this FEDD project. And here are our works cited for both the research and photos used.